Hello and welcome to the Wealth Approach. This month we're covering love and finance. We're recording on Valentine's Day, so we thought it would be timely. And we wanted to start by sharing just a little stat from the Wedding Wire. So nearly 40% of US engagements occur between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day. Since we're just closing out Valentine's Day today, we thought this would be timely. We come across this pretty often, obviously, in our business with navigating some of these conversations. So we just wanted to share some tips and best practices with how to be successful in navigating these conversations. So to start, the first tip is start early. I would say it's never too early, but probably you don't want to start on the first date, maybe at least get past that point. But I think just starting somewhere, it doesn't mean that you're going to show them your net worth statement on day one. I think just building towards something and starting the conversations, and just being open with what everything is and what it's meant for, I think is part of it.
Well, and I agree, Megan. So, are you funding your lifestyle with credit card debt, for example? It'd be good to know, right? So I think figuring out, where the cash flow and in general conversation, what are your goals as you think long-term about, your engagement or marriage ahead? I mean, those kinds of conversations can be stressful if you're overspending and living beyond your means a little bit. Whereas if you do have the financial wealth or have come into the marriage with some inheritance or have saved up ahead of time, it's good to kind of handle those conversations, start them as early as you can.
Right. And it's important to not wait till it matters. So when you're ready to buy a home or when you have some of these really big purchase items, paying for a wedding, it's important to not wait till the last minute to start having the conversations and building towards something together, making sure that it works for both parties. And so the next one is prioritize together. I just kind of touched on that, but Michael, do you want to elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're talking about prioritizing together, it's again, as we're saying, to have those shared goals in mind and really have that conversation about what's important to you sort of in the short term, medium term, and long term. And whether, again, that's going to be buying your first home together, whether it's starting a family, and then as you get to retirement, sort of what each of those phases of life look like. And if you can be on the same page with your spouse or partner on those items, it's going to help your financial life and sort of really blend in with the rest of your life together. And again, as you look to prioritize, it's really about where do you want to focus your efforts right now, and moving forward, what do those efforts look like for both people?
Yeah, and that's where I think having some of those conversations, they could look like, when do both of you ideally think you want to retire? If one person is thinking they want to retire at age 50 and the other person was thinking 75, that's fine, but there's going to be a lifestyle adjustment where one spouse is working for a long period of time. Another item would be just making sure you can afford to retire early. One spouse might think they want to retire at this certain age, but to maintain this lifestyle, you're going to together have to the amount of resources that would be able to sustain that for a while. So I think getting on the same page early, obviously things can evolve and adjust, but just having a directional goal together and making sure those are aligned and making sure that your financial goals also align with what those are long term.
And Megan, when you think about the financial plan, because again, to your point, a lot of the younger generation wants to retire maybe 50 or earlier, early 50s. And if your household's making $500,000, for example, combined, right, sustaining that lifestyle, working backward with your financial plan, you probably need close to 10 million in savings to sustain that lifestyle over that long retirement. So it's understanding how much you need, what's your joint goal together to get there. And if you don't want to get to 10 million savings, then you got to adjust your lifestyle downward to sustain that. Again, these are the conversations that are good to have together, and it really brings it back to being on the same page financially.
The next tip for success is regular check-ins. So Jared, do you want to touch on that?
Well, I think when you think about regular check-ins, I think majority of people, life gets in the way, you get too busy, you're not organized. So really, as we think about what's the minimum as you're getting started with some of these conversations and getting organized, if you're early in your relationship or early in your career, at least once a year is a good touch point to kind of list out all your assets together, talk about overall, see where you are on track with that plan, and then really have conversations around maybe big money events or life events. For example, a large bonus comes in. What do we want to do with it? How should we invest that? What's the conversation around that? Or a tax refund, or if it's a tax bill, how to come up and communicate that as well. And I think those conversations are good, or just conversations around spending. How much I'm doing a one-off purchase for a few $1,000s, letting your spouse be aware of that and kind of plan those conversations together. But the overall communication, at least once a year, as your life evolves, right? It could turn into quarterly or maybe even monthly, depending on where things are overall. But really getting started, it's really at least once a year, and check in on those financial life events that come along the way.
Right. And I know I've come across different families along the way that meet even more regularly at once a week. I would say as a family, that probably makes sense because you have kids' soccer games, you're coordinating a lot of life events. But from a financial standpoint, that's most likely overkill. Then you might be kind of overanalyzing and overstressing week to week. But I agree, at least once a year minimum. And then, anywhere between that and weekly, it's probably a good start. And then I know Michael and I have talked about this, but having just kind of like a minimum where you just let the other spouse know. It's not necessarily for permission, but hey, over a certain amount, I'm just going to make you aware I'm stocking up on wine or whatever the household needs, but it could be a big bill, and just letting you know that's going to be coming through the pipeline. Communication, again, just really helps, and regular check-ins. As you can see here, money is the #1 issue that married couples fight about. And we don't have the exact stat, but it could lead to about a third of divorces. That number could be higher. We weren't able to find an exact stat, but that's where communication and making sure to just regularly check in. This is not something you can just do once when you first get married and be done. You both have to be on the same page long-term, and touching base regularly, making sure you both understand everything that's going on will go a long way.
Well, having 6 kids, I know that there's plenty of other things to fight about than money. So again, this conversation is really about staying organized and communicating around that, so you can really mitigate this as an issue and really focus on other priorities, especially kids, family, other things.
Definitely.
Right. And I think for the three of us on this, on this call right now, that talking about money, talking about finances, talking about estate planning, and all of that is, it's very second nature to us. So we, are probably in a position where we could say, whether it's monthly, quarterly, however much we want to talk about it with our spouse. I think it's important that for people, they can, if one partner is more knowledgeable or has a bit more information, and the other, again, from the communication standpoint, make sure that everybody's on the same page. And if one person needs a little bit more education, as you see right here, talk about seeking guidance, work with your advisor, work with your, if it's a tax question, work with your accountant. If it's a estate question, work with the attorney, but always, it always helps to have either have a third party or have just another sort of clarifying source for information or questions. Because some of these things, they're not easy topics. Sometimes from a difficulty just talking about finances, or just a difficult of the subject matter. So to have somebody that can provide better answers, is always going to be a good step forward and really help, I think build a stronger financial relationship.
Well, and Michael, I think a lot of households probably use the divide and conquer approach in a lot of ways. Like you said, my niche is in the financial field, yours is more in the family and organization and everything else. But again, if you think of your family as a business, and you being the co-owners of the business, might not be your specialty to be in certain niches of the business, but when you're running, you want to be aware of all aspects. And again, I think if you divide and conquer, that's fine, but then report back and have that communication so that everybody's aware of everything that's going on, especially in the financial side, as money movements go and setting goals. That divide and conquer is good, just report back and be on the same page.
And to talk about reporting back as well, one thing we've encountered with a lot of young married couples is that one spouse will have have one advisor, and the other spouse will sort of have their other advisor, maybe an old family advisor. And the question is, well, do you consolidate with one? Do you consolidate assets with the other? And I think the really important thing is that, both is that you and your partner can sit down with both advisors and sort of make sure that at the end of the day, the goals are the same, they're communicated the same across the board, and that, whether you go with one or the other or stick with both, that everybody's working towards the same goals, which are going to be you.
And I think a good analogy here is, let's say that you both maybe were living somewhere, whether it's apartments or you both own property. But maybe one of the homes will work for both of you. Maybe one of the homes you still want to keep and rent out. So if you think about it from an advisor standpoint, you can either go with either of the advisors or find one together, or keep one of the old advisors for existing accounts. But what's most important at the end of the day is making sure that you're both comfortable. And there's no right answer, but it's just seeking professionals where you feel comfortable, you feel like you're in good hands, and you feel like everyone's on the same page, even if there's more than one. So that's really important.
Well, and I think one of the big topics on a lot of people's mind, we've had so many conversations over the last 4 months, is real estate, right? And over the last couple of years, with interest rates going up dramatically, there's been a lot less activity. A lot of people are kind of frozen. They've been increasing their savings to put a down payment down, and a lot of conversations going on around real estate. And again, when you think of what goes into it, if you're not communicating, if one person has a 500 credit score and the other has an 800 credit score, it's going to be difficult to navigate getting a mortgage, and there's other challenges that go with that. There's good family conversations when you're looking for down payments overall, and talking through some of the overall conversations, because we've done a lot of interfamily loans and gifts and other things from one generation to the next to facilitate down payments. But that can open up other conversations within, your relationship with your spouse, depending on, is that premarital, is that a gift, and other conversations. Michael, I don't know if you want to jump in a little bit on that topic.
Yeah, it's, when you're looking at it from that perspective, you have sort of your assets may bring into the marriage, and your partner might not have as much. And the question is there really going to be a level of comfort? How do you integrate accordingly? And as you are looking at building this new life together, how is that going to be done in a way where you're able to have these good conversations where it's it's a delicate conversation, that you're not trying to create hostility by saying, all right, this is mine or this was yours, but this was something that came in from my family. And then as things come together from your family as well, that you do maintain that sort of separation. And then from there, again, you can bring things together and start building together jointly.
Well, because the other thing I think we see very commonly is families will gift to their kids or grandkids for a down payment, and it secures the mortgage. But then do you follow up and file the gift tax return, right? How do you transfer that money? So I think it's an interesting topic, as the real estate conversation will pick up this year, making sure you do it correctly, making sure it's documented between generations, and then following up with your spouse to make sure you're on the same page as to kind of what you said, Michael.
Wonderful. So we hope that you all enjoyed these tips for success, and feel free to reach out to any of us directly if you want some one-on-one guidance as well. We're here to help. We obviously navigate these in our own households on a regular basis, and we help many families with these conversations. So feel free to reach out.